if we would like to proceed to a future where psychedelics research is taken serious, we should not proceed in the way like, yes, we want to be part of official medicine, and that's the way to go, because then you are forced in a one target, one disease, and one drug paradigm, and you would not like to do that because it's a high-risk adventure. And why I'm saying this is because I have been studying the history of psychiatry and psychiatric drugs for more than 20 years now. And what you see also in psychiatry is that a lot of psychiatrists have adapted to this one target, one disease, one drug. And the result is, I would say, quite unfortunate, because we are now seeing a field, a psychiatry, that is in need of a complete, I would say, refurbishing of models, etc., to get more success. And success is not by using pills that go straight to a target, because the brain is too complex for that. And not only the brain, but also our genetics. And we are increasingly seeing this complexity. If we go to this, what's called the successful research result of the past time, the Imperial College trial, we have been on radio together with Mendel, Cullen, who was part of this, the research team, and it was fascinating to see the kind of expectation that are outside this room in the open. What was the statement of the person who was interviewing us for Dutch radio? Here is psilocybin, and it's maybe the new wonder drug to heal depression. And this is a high-risk thing, because it will never end up at the pharmacy store. Because if it would be, I would say, a high-promise molecule to buy at a pharmacy store, it would already have been there for years. So don't expect this to happen. And because if, just suppose, psilocybin would be available at the normal pharmacy store, who is going to take the risk for all those people who are going to their homes and doing things with psilocybin without any consultation or any safeguards? Because what we would like to have is an environment, and Amanda already referred to it, is if you want to get this to the community and to medicine, it should be under strict conditions, because you need the idea of drug set and setting. Without the set and without taking care of the setting, it's a no-go as far as I'm concerned. And what's the mechanism hypothesis that's put forward in this article? And that's interesting, because Mendel, in the conversation on the radio, when we were discussing the mechanism of action, he said, yes, you know, we as a research team believe that's the hallucinic experience in itself that helps to overcome the depression and the depressive state. It's interesting, because in the article, there's no mention of this. I only can read, it's this neurotransmitter, it's a serotonin agonistic action, and if you are using serotonin inhibitors, don't do that, because that will interact and it will negatively influence the effectiveness. and it's no words on the hallucinogenic experience. And this is also in line with the history of trying to get LSD into mainstream medicine. Because in the laboratories of the pharmaceutical companies, scientists have tried to make a disconnect between the hallucinogenic effects and the pharmacological effects. And it didn't work out because it was not effective. You need both in one molecule. And not only one molecule, but I would say a complex of molecules. If you make a disconnect between the natural environments where you use the mushrooms or other psychedelics, and you are going to isolate a specific compound, you will lose some effects. And mostly the effects that are therapeutically relevant. Going back in history, we take the time machine, of course, because I don't go back a decade, but I go back to the 19th century. That's so essential for our disconnect between the disease and the therapy. Because what happened in this era is that we started to believe in the torpedo fallacy, I would say. The one target, one drug, one disease paradigm. This is where all our medicine is built on. If you would like it or not, this is the truth. Whether it's cancer, it's depression, or something else that's harming you. And it's funny to see, because together with Stefan Snelders, you already saw yesterday, we did research on the history of why cannabis didn't make it into official medicine, and the first synthetic sleeping drug, chloral hydrate, did. Because cannabis sativa is so hard to standardize within medical practice. Without standardization, it's hard to have it accepted in a context that is based on epidemiology, standardization, and no variation in effects. This one drug, one disease paradigm was first, I would say, put in the open by the grandfather of Aldous Huxley, Thomas Huxley, who already in 1881 referred to this bright future where we would be able to send torpedoes into the human body and to kill all disease. The myth and the mythology of, I would say, the failure of medicine to take other ways of healing serious. Hoffman, who has always been lauded for, of course, the synthesis of LSD, and has also been the, I would say, the reason of the disconnect between LSD experiences. Amanda started with in the 60s and within communities, and has been, in a way, put away for 50 years for coming back from the back door. But you see this image and you see chemical formulas. So what Hoffman did is taking it to the laboratory and also exporting this laboratory knowledge to the field of science and infecting psychiatry with it. Because psychiatrists were not taken serious in medicine because of their holistic view on disease in the first half of the 20th century. The moment they started talking in terms of epidemiology and neurology and neurotransmitters, they became more, their status started to rise. And they became more happy that they were taken serious by the surgeon, by the internal medicine persons, so we can talk the same language. It's about talking languages. And you have to recognize somebody within the medical complex, and if you are not talking the same language, you are not taken serious. And if you read the first experience Hoffman had with LSD, that's completely different from the picture, sorry for this, first experience. On arriving home, I lay down in a dazed condition with my eyes closed. There surged upon me an uninterrupted stream of fantastic images of extraordinary plasticity and vividness, and accompanied by an intense kaleidoscopic play of colors. So that's completely different from the molecule statements, the chemistry. This is a person who experiences for the first time in the 40s a new compound X. We all know now by the name LSD. And LSD became not the icon only for the communities of the 60s, the liberation movement, but also the icon of the biological psychiatry. Because LSD enabled psychiatrists doing research in the laboratory to counteract or be counteracted by molecules that came out of the same laboratory, like the first antipsychotics, the three cyclic compounds, and it was regarded as very valuable as a laboratory tool. And at the same time, it became abolished because of the war of drugs. So yes, it helped to create psychopharmacology. Did it help in a good way? No, it didn't, because it enforced the idea of the torpedo image of psychiatry and modern medicine. So, and it's interesting to see, because if you are not convinced by the line of thought, I will show you that when these first new antipsychotic substances arrived on the scene, psychiatry was still a holistic field of medicine. Because the chlorpromazine was used in sleep therapy. And that's quite interesting because it was used as you can read also, as a neuroplegic. So it takes care of the balance of the nerves. And you have to restore the balance of the nerves to overcome the schizophrenic state. So, and when did it change all? It didn't change in the 50s, but it did change in the 60s when the neurotransmitter theory and paradigm became dominant. And you can see it in Life magazine, so a popular magazine. You can all look it up for yourself on the internet. And on the one hand, this is a new creative society. LSD will promote the USA into a new future, a creative future. And on the other hand, it's the chemistry of madness years later, in which, if you can read the text, they talk about a substance that is under paragraph 1. So it's forbidden. So the promise of the psychoactive magic bullet with a controllable and specific effect on the chemistry of the brain was kept neither by taurazine, so the new antipsychotics, or LSD, nor by any of the other new synthetic compounds. Whether we talk about the antidepressants, we talk about Ritalin, because methylphenidate, part of Ritalin, it's the molecule, the effective molecule, is far from specific. And on the contrary, the chemical effects of the drugs on the mind turned out to be remarkably non-specific. And is that surprising? No, it isn't. Of course not. Because the brain is so complex, and if you are tuning in one side, it will have an effect on the other. And it's not only my belief, because if you go to the Brain Research Center here in Amsterdam, around the corner, and you interview the persons at the front of science, do you believe there will be a cure for Alzheimer in 20 years? And they say, no, of course not. Because we are still starting to understand how the brain works. It's so complex. And it dropped out of the medical setting, not all at once, because there have been people like Amanda trying to keep it there, but there was a disconnect because it became forbidden substance. It was not a low-risk adventure. It became a high-risk adventure for researchers who still wanted to continue. What mechanism hypothesis is fruitful? So I'm coming to the end, and I would like to go into discussion with you how we should proceed. Are we opting for the scientific route? So going for the placebo versus non-placebo trials, and then I'm sure this future won't work, because we have to maintain the precious experience within close communities and the experience that will be therapeutically relevant, instead of going for the road that it will be accepted as an official therapy that's going to be a failure, because you need a specific set and setting to have a therapeutically relevant, effective, hallucinogenic experience, not a compound molecule. So the specificity paradigm has proven to be inadequate to address complex diseases, and psychiatric diseases are in principle complex, because the brain is complex, and the interaction between the brain and the body, and the environment, of course. But anyway, for instance, your gut. What has your gut to do with your brain? A lot. We are now starting to know a little bit more about if your gut is not functioning really well, it will affect your brain. Even worse, it can launch serious diseases like Parkinson and other diseases. Moreover, researchers have found that most of the successful FDA-approved small molecule drugs, so the low-hanging fruits that were developed prior to the year 2000, are promiscuous. Exemplary, of course, are aspirin. It does whatever you would like to have it done. Cancer, it can poison you in a dramatic way. It can help you off a headache. And it will affect your blood platelets. Ritalin, but also the antidepressant and antipsychotics, and of course LSD and psilocybin, because they are neither the torpedo or the miracle drug. And I hope we can have a discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, for this appropriate contextualizing of these drugs and their effects and how they will be interpreted in the scientific community and how they may have a tendency to be reduced to some receptor interaction or stuff like that. And so what I a little bit missed in your talk was that the therapeutic process itself, even that can't be decontextualized from these environmental circumstances of the person and of the history of the person, of the resources of that individual person, and so on. But we are open for discussions about this pretty interesting and relevant topic. Yeah.
I may add a little bit on to this, the environment and the way psychiatrists looked to the importance of the environment in the 50s. The claims were that the antipsychotics, yes, they were effective, but without taking care of a good therapeutic environment, they don't work as well as if you don't take them into account. So there was a whole therapeutic community idea behind it. Yes.
So thank you very much for your talk. You hit on a lot of points that I've had considerable question about in pharmacology for years. So my main point and question kind of to you is, do you feel after researching pharmacological history that actually it's more of a biopsychosocial cultural issue, these mental illnesses, and that they actually pertain more to the relevant meaning in culture and the lack thereof in these mentally ill individuals, and that medicine should actually kind of refocus to its Hippocratic roots of integrating the individual into society?
Are they in principle a interaction between biopsychosocial? Yes, they are. We have big studies now. What is the biggest risk factor in igniting a psychiatric disease, whether it's anxiety, depression, or schizophrenia? It's a trauma in early childhood. So child abuse, so common, is one of the biggest risks we are witnessing nowadays.
And just kind of a second aspect of that, do you feel globalization has played a major role in that, kind of in the immense rise in mental health issues in the last 20 years?
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Frederick Polak. I'm a retired psychiatrist, so I'm not following all the new developments, but I think that Mr. Pieters has a very important subject here, this idea to go counter this idea that the psychedelic drugs could be introduced in medicine just like other drugs have been introduced. What you refer to something like one disease, one drug, and you had a third point.
One target.
One target, yes. But what I wanted to say is, don't you think that this, what you try to convey to us, is generally felt already and understood, that the way people react to when they hear about the effects of the psychedelic drugs on persons and on certain afflictions or diseases, that it is already much broader than how we are thinking about usual drugs. So I think that you're worried that this will go the wrong way. It's important to say this, but I think that most people already understand this, that it can never be compared to a drug like antibiotic or something like that.
You're a little bit, I think, too optimistic in terms of if the experience I had with the media and I have had this experience not once, but more times, then it's always the expectation that in the end, you will deliver a cure for this and that. So we don't like to hear that you have to get in a way to get to know your condition and know how to handle the specific problematic situations without trying to go for the cure.
Yeah. Well, maybe one to add to this, what I heard, for instance, from, I see behind me, that how they do this with the whole sessions that patients go through before they get the psychedelic substance. It's so much more than simply prescribing a medicine to a patient and the patient goes home and does what the doctor tells him. There is so much more to it already in what we heard here today that I would suppose, at least we are present here, we understand this already.
Yes, you may understand it, but if I see the idea that was put forward by Amanda, that by trying to align with the scientists and then thinking that by proving that it's better than a placebo, there is a risk that you end up with nothing instead of trying to preserve the 50 years of experience within the communities, and that's so important to have therapeutic communities aligned to this, the introduction of psychedelics in medicine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jeff. So you will be the last, Jeff.
Okay,
sorry.
So Jeffrey Gus, I'm guilty of a number of the categories that you described, but I couldn't agree more with the ideas that you're putting forward. I've seen it so often both in research settings and in clinical settings, or like in a grand round setting where Steve Ross, our PI with our study, would present very carefully the ideas that you put forward, and then questions should be, so what dose would you use of this for depression or this for anxiety? It's such an innate, instinctive way that psychiatrists are taught to think. The question that I have for you would be, what kind of language would you use that's relatively succinct, gets the idea across quickly with researchers or people who are writing research protocols, trying to imagine research projects, or clinical psychiatries or department chairs who want to hear these, who you want to communicate these ideas to quickly and succinctly, that moves away from the magic bullet, magic box problem that you described so well?
Yes, what I would like to propose is to embrace complexity, what we already do in science, and explain that by embracing complexity, it means embracing the therapeutic environment that is so important therapeutically, and already the psychiatrists mentioning prescribing a medicine, we all know, research has been done, that not all doctors are effective, as effective as the others, because some turn this whole act into something, a ritual that is already therapeutically active. Yes, I agree with you. Is it easy? No, because as soon as you start with introducing complexity, it becomes vague, and we should prevent to become vague.
Right, and impatience.
Yeah.
You know, you want to hear something in 12 seconds, so, oh, okay, I got it. You know, serotonin receptors, oh, okay, now I understand it. We see this over and over again. You've got about 12 seconds to make your pitch of your idea.
Okay.
And it better be succinct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Peter.